Let's do this.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Daily Devotion with Beez. I'm your host, Beez the Chaplain. It's a very hot one today, and the reason why I'm dressed up like this, and I don't have my denim jacket, I don't have thing, and I actually don't have my contacts on. Good morning, Washay. Good morning, Mom. Hope you're both doing well. The reason why I don't have any of this, my glasses and stuff on, is because yesterday I went to prison, for work, and since the COVID circumstances are still the same, we're unable right now to go and visit inmates because of the risk. So in the interim, we don't know, it's not we're sitting ducks, but we're kind of on standby, but I don't like the idea of just going there and doing nothing. So I spoke to the head of security, and I was like, hey, how can we help? Because it seems like there's a portion of inmates that actually contribute to the running of the prison, in regards to laundry, creating meals and lunches and all that kind of stuff. And since they couldn't do that, staff had to do that. So you got guards, you got psychs and all these guys doing things that they wouldn't do. And so we're like, hey, so I was like, hey, if I'm going to be a chaplain, I'm not just a student. As I was when I was back in high school, I was like, as a high school chaplain, I'm not just a student chaplain, so I'm a high school chaplain. So anyone involved in high school, so students, staff, auxiliary staff, the bus drivers, parents, anyone involved. For me, that's what chaplaincy was, providing support to the environment of high school. Now that I'm in prison, I wanted to do the same thing. So I went to the head of security and said, I was like, well, what do you want? What can I do? And they're like, okay, well, tomorrow I want you to go to this particular area and then just ask the guy if there's anything available. So yeah, yesterday it was like I was in Woolworths. I was packing boxes, packing lunches. I was in the fridge, the industrial fridge, sorting out milks and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey, man, I just whatever you got to do, you do, because I know at the end of the day, though I'm not ministering, though that I'm not running a Bible study and stuff like that, it's on the downtime that, you can really show, the love of Christ. You can really be the hands and feet of Jesus. And if that's to provide the support to the staff members who are involved in the prison, then that's what you do, or that's what I've chosen to do. And it just so happened yesterday, there were a handful of inmates who were able to work as well. So I was able to have a chat with one of the inmates there, having a jolly good chat in the fridge. So that was great as well. Anyway, we're going to get into the devotion because, the reason why I'm wearing this and kind of is because I'm going back out there to probably do the same thing. And yesterday it was hot. It was boiling hot in there with my denim jacket. I'm there with, my glasses and stuff. And coming in and out of that fridge, I'm walking out and my glasses are all fogged up, looking ridiculous. So today I'm just rocking the contacts. Anyway, today today's daily devotion is titled Prisoner of Choice. And I'm going to read this Bible passage because I really like it. But sometimes when we use words like enslaved, prisoner, those kind of things, it's like, ooh, it sounds a bit intense. So I titled this one today, Prisoner of Choice. Now let's actually read the Bible passage. And I was inspired by Pastor Amanda from God Squad Church. She used this passage, I think, in an announcement, a couple of days back, and that really impressed on my heart. And I felt inspired to go and look at it more. So I'm going to have a look at it, and I'm going to share with you my thoughts on it. So here we go. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1-3. And this is what it says. As a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling. For a second, I thought I was on mute. Anyway, so as a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. for me, that's a very beautiful passage. But the thing that wrecks it is that word prisoner. Because I think to myself, that's really harsh. Because here it's like Paul is saying, as a prisoner for the Lord, then I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling. If that word wasn't there and we substituted, just say for as a friend of the Lord or as a companion of the Lord, you know, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. It sounds nicer, but I truly believe it also strips the significance and the impact it has. Because when I went to the Greek and I went into and it's called, if you ever want to look this up, or if you ever looking at a Bible passage and you're challenged by a particular word, it might not be that the word is wrong. It's actually right. The word is prisoner. But it might not be as harsh as that, or it might kind of have a different angle towards it. And that's what I discovered, because I went online, I went to this thing called the Interlinear Bible. And so what the Interlinear Bible does is it lines you up with the scripture that you're reading, and then it writes the Greek and the translation underneath, like word for word direct translation. And you can actually look up what that particular word is. And so when I looked at that word prisoner, I actually found that it was still prisoner, but there was two things that was missing, or the two things that changed my mind. The first thing is it says, as a prisoner for the Lord. It already sounds different to as a prisoner of the Lord. Now, I went to the Greek, and unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to see the difference between for and of. But automatically or straight away when I'm hearing that, there is a difference also in the interlinear, where it's as a prisoner in the Lord. And so when I started looking up the word, prisoner, what did that mean? And because for me, it's like straight away, what this passage does, even though it's beautiful, even though it sounds great, what it does is it strips away the choice. It strips away my freedom of choice. And so this is what it says: as a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. When I went to that word prisoner, I looked at it, and it wasn't as, and basically the direct translation is as someone who is bound, who is someone who is bound and connected to. And so for me, it's not this thing of not someone who has been forced or someone who is a slave to this. But I want to put a pin on that right now, because I want to just accept, or I want to acknowledge a reality that we are all living in. And that reality is that if there is anything, if we're a slave to, it's inevitable that we are a slave to something. It is inevitable that we are bound to something, right? And you're probably thinking, no, I don't have any addictions. I don't have any dependencies. I would beg to differ. And, before you leave me and you say, no, this guy's talking trash, whatever, just hear me out. When it comes to being bound to something, there is something that Paul writes, and it says, I'll use an example. And it's just say, for example, I'm addicted to cigarettes, right? And my father was a smoker, but he is a rare person that I know that just gave up cold turkey. I don't know if he did it because it looked good, and then he kind of changed his mind and then he cut. But yeah, he just decided one day, I think it was because of the health or whatever, that he just stopped, and he stopped cold turkey. And what I realized is that he just gave up and he relied on his willpower. When I went and in my studies at college, even that is bound to something. You're like, well, he wasn't reliant on the cigarettes. He wasn't reliant on this. But what he was reliant on was his willpower. Now, people are like, oh, well, what's the big deal with that? One of the biggest things that Satan tries to do is not say, I'm taking you away from God so you can be with me. It's what he tries to do is say, I'm taking you away so you can rely on self. And the way Paul puts it is, when you start relying on self, it's will worship, right? And it's like you've become enslaved to yourself, and sometimes it's like, And there's this a bit of a contradiction there, because it's like, well, if I'm not a slave to anything exterior, then I'm free. But technically, unfortunately, you're a slave to the choices that you make. You're a slave to the choices and the behaviors and the actions that you take, right? And so it's ultimately, for me, if you're going to be bound to something, it's still applicable in this passage, because you're bounding, you're binding yourself, or you're becoming enslaved to your own choices. And without any exterior or external influences, sometimes if you've just got negative thoughts, negative emotions, and negative things that are in your mind, and you're fusing them, and you're letting them dictate you, that's not healthy, irrespective of the fact that they're your own. Because people, like, there are posts and stuff where it's like, I'm fighting my own demons. I'm fighting the things in my head. Yeah. Because sometimes when you rely on your choices, your own choices, without the support of others, without the support of anything external, then even within yourself, you're bound to your own thoughts, you're bound to your own feelings. And that in itself could be corruptive. If you don't have a positive outlook on life, if you don't have a positive attitude, if you're just constantly in a negative space, relying on that, becoming dependent on that, being bound to that, being a prisoner to that, is not healthy. So for me, the idea of prisoner in this passage, in this context, I'm going to use the word that is substituted in this space, and that is to be bound to. Now, for me, when I read it in that sense, the choice is still mine. The choice is still mine to say, though I am bound, I am still free to disconnect. Though I am bound to the love of Jesus Christ, I am still free to choose otherwise. Though I am bound in this relationship, though I've asked Jesus to reconnect with me and solidify this connection, it's still my free will. It's still my choice to detach. I still have that choice. So I'm going to use bound, to be bound in this relationship, because for me, there is this element of freedom found within this passage. But ultimately, let's acknowledge that thing, that we are bound to something, even if it's to self. That's the first thing. And if you disagree with me, okay, that's cool. But thank you for allowing me to provide that explanation. So when I say we are enslaved to something, or we're bound to something, even if it's our own self, even if it's our own thoughts, opinions, even if it's our own, our own mind and the stuff that's going on in here, in my opinion, we are still bound to it. So as a person that's bound for the Lord, as a person that's connected to the Lord, as a person who's chosen to be bound to the Lord, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling. Now, it's this thing, it says a prisoner for the Lord, or someone who's so connected in God. Now, Paul is urging us, it's like, so live a life accordingly. What does that life look like? Well, if we look at the life, these are the things, these are the instructions that is left. It says here, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. For me, that is saturated in the Spirit of God. That is saturated. Why? Because there are so many things. The byproduct of so many of these things are the fruits of the Spirit, or the fruit of the Spirit of God. Be humble, be gentle, be patient, be bearing. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. I'm saying it wrong. I'm doing it in my head, right? I would say it says love, in love, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Or 7 out of the 9 I can see, and I can read that of this is what you need when you are bound. This is what you need as you go and live a life according to you being bound to God. This is what I love, because it reminds me of the passage of John 15 verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. For me, this is once again this idea of cause and effect. If the cause is that you are bound to God, then the effect is that you will live a life according to the calling, which means that your outward expression of that will be, you will be humble, completely humble and gentle, being patient, bearing with one another in love. And then it says, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. That the way that sentence is constructed is doing my head in, right? It says, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. So there's a couple of chunks. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit. That unity can work both ways, here and here. And what I mean by that is by the unity of the Spirit of God, that bounding, that bondage, that becoming a prisoner, right? Becoming enslaved, to become so connected, right? It's this, because I'm not going to talk about the bound, bonds, enslaved thing. We've already covered that. But I'm saying this connection, it's saying make every effort to remain connected here in the unity of the Spirit, remain connected to the Spirit of God. So the byproduct of that, or the consequence of that, is that you'll be able to show that to everyone else. You'll be able to show that to the world. You'll be able to showcase that as an expression of love and as an expression of you living up to the calling of being bound to God. That's what that passage means. It is such, for me, though there is freedom in this passage, the decision to remain bound, how do I say this? It's so much more liberating. Why? Because it's not in my own works. The only effort that I need to do is make I'm fumbling, not fumbling. I'm stuttering. Fumbling my words, and I apologize. But for me, it's because I'm getting really excited about this passage, because it's this word of encouragement in what I need to do so I can be an expression of being bound to God. And all I need to do is make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit. All I need to do is make every effort not to be gentle, not to be patient, not to be, not to go and be the hands and feet of love by myself. That's not every effort. The every effort is to be connected to God. Because if I do this, then the actual effort, the consequence of that will come naturally because of God in me. If I try and do that in myself, in my own, if I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing. That's what God's telling me. Right? He's saying, make every effort. If you're going to connect, if you're going to stay connected, don't try and do this. Like, make every effort to connect with me. Don't try every effort to go and do it yourself. Right? Because what this will do naturally will showcase that you are bound in me, that me and you are tight. And from that, you will go and show love, absolute, complete humility, peace, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another. And what I love about Paul is that he's actually saying this to the church in Ephesus, right? And so it's this new church, this up and coming church. And he's saying, this is what fosters community. This is what fosters church. This is what fosters the environment. When everyone is doing that, and then so they can do that, the natural consequence of that organically is that they will grow in love. They will grow in patience for one another. They will be completely humble with one another. And for me, that's what encourages me. That's what inspires me. That's what motivates me to see, for me to be part of a community of believers who are like-minded in this, who are aspiring to remain connected in God, so they can showcase the love of Jesus to one another. That's what that's what church is about. Church is about individuals journeying with God, so much so, and letting that overflow into the community amongst one another. What I love about that also is that there's no exclusion there, right? There's no walls around. That's just a free thing. People come and go. People, there is freedom in that. But what brings the community together is the commonality of us all doing this, all remaining in God. And then the natural consequence or the natural result of that is that we're showing love to one another in the community of believers. So for me, that's why, just wrapping it up, that's why I've called it a prisoner of choice. So though I'm bound to God, that's because of the choice that I've made, because I would rather be bound to God than be bound to my own thoughts and my own feelings. I would rather be bound to God than be bound to my own insecurities, my own fears, my own shortcomings, my own sin. I'd rather be bound to God because he liberates me in that space. I think I'm going to talk about that more tomorrow. I'm going to talk about what we will be bound, we choose to bind ourselves to or choose to enslave ourselves to if it's not God. I'll leave that for tomorrow. But for today, I want us to celebrate the fact that when we are bound to God, when we are prisoners in God, it is something that's so beautiful, so freeing, because the natural result is that we will be completely humble. We will showcase the fruits of the Spirit, and we will grow in community with one another. Let's have a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this morning. And Lord, I just pray that you take my words that I've spoken, and through the ums and the ahs and the stuttering and the fumbling, that you transform those words, so that the people who are live or the people who will listen to this later will hear your voice and sift out all the garbage that I said, so they can get an understanding of you, a deeper connection with of you, so they can choose to be bound to you. Lord, I pray that by the power of the Spirit, that if there was anything that deterred anyone away from you, from what I said, that you cleanse that. So the message is pure. The message is just you. Be with me and all of us now. May you keep us safe. I ask this all in your loving name. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Devotion with Beez on Instagram Live, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube Live. I'm sorry, I'm so sweaty. It is so hot this morning, man. And so I'm heading out to work. So I will see you tomorrow. Yeah, I really want to talk about this idea of what we are bound to if we're not bound to Christ. So I'll save that for tomorrow. I'll see you at 7:30 for another Daily Devotion with Beez. In the meantime, stay safe, stay blessed. Peace out. Much love. All right, cool. Wow, it's so hot, man.